Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where as always we learn through the misfortunes of others. I am your host, Uncivil Law, and we are here to talk about the continuing Murdaugh murder trial in the great state of South Carolina. Alex Murdaugh on trial for murder of his wife and son, and the testimony continues, even though the trial was supposed to be over by now, because the original projected end date was February 10th. And that didn't happen. And although the state has said it thinks its case will be over on Wednesday, we don't know how many witnesses the defense really intends to call. So we are well into next week. There's no trial on Monday of next week due to President's Day holiday. So this trial will probably end, if I had to guess, next Wednesday. I would think the jury is going to get it. And maybe we'll have a verdict by the end of next week. Seems to be the rough timeline for how this thing is progressing. But the evidence continues to be somewhat thin against Murdaugh, and there seems to be some other problems. And also, of course, there is problems in that we have lost 2 additional jurors today due to a positive test of COVID. So we had lost 1 juror earlier because of some sort of family emergency. And then we lost 2 more jurors today because of a positive COVID test, which leaves us with 3 alternate jurors. Now, if we don't have 12 jurors by the end of this, then we get to do this all over again. Mistrial by manifest necessity. Fun and exciting. We no longer have the sufficient number of jurors. We tried to get enough. We ran out. It's no one's fault. Redo, right? It's not an error that's incurred by the states. It's an error incurred by the world. So mistrial by manifest necessity. So we may wind up doing this all over again, depending on how many more jurors we lose along the way. If that happens, I will be sad. But that is definitely a possibility for sure. So yes. Also, we learned today that the fine people of OnStar, GM, have suddenly found data relating to the car in question. The state apparently at some point, as part of its investigation process, sent a subpoena to GM. OnStar said, hey, give us the OnStar data. And GM said, we don't have the OnStar data. We don't have it. Can't make it. We don't have it. Well, apparently, according to the state's representations today, the fine people of OnStar apparently have been watching this trial. And we're like, wait a second, they don't have the OnStar data. Let's take a look. And presto, bingo, the data is now available. And it just was produced. So all someone had to do was press a button, and there it was. Which makes you wonder a little bit about what happened before, to be quite honest. Because, like, when we sent you the subpoena and be like, give us the OnStar data, and you said, we don't have the OnStar data, my question is, so, like, what changed? Who lied? Who did it bad at OnStar? Now, it seems that the defense doesn't have any particular objection to this evidence coming in at this time, because it is, at least as they've represented so far, consistent with all the time frame data they had before. So the defense is not arguing some sort of unfair surprise, which would be obvious an objection, right? It's like, this is data we didn't have to prepare for, unfair surprise, right? But they aren't making that objection, or at least they haven't made that objection yet. It seems like the defense wants it because they feel like there are portions of the data that are helpful to their case. Fine. So apparently they are going to have someone from GM OnStar on Wednesday who is the records custodian. Maybe he can be asked, hey, you know how you said earlier you didn't have the records? What up with that, homie? Because that would be my question as the judge, right? I want to know the answer to that question, right? I don't care if the attorneys want to know. I want to know. because you are now potentially in violation of a court process, and I might want to thump your skull. But we'll see what's going to happen in terms of all that. So, yeah. So we'll see what's going to happen in terms of all that. Now, it doesn't seem like there's any constitutional violation here. The state can only give what evidence it has. The state is required to turn over any incriminating evidence under Brady versus Maryland. If they don't have it, they can't turn it over. GM OnStar is not a governmental agency, so they are not imputed like it would be if it were the police department, right? So if the police department said, if the situation was, the prosecutor says, well, we didn't have the DNA evidence, we subpoenaed the state crime lab, and they said we don't have the DNA evidence, and then suddenly the state crime lab's like, yes, we do, we have it, right? You can't do that because the prosecution is bound to turn over evidence of the state, which includes the state crime lab. So not only information in their own possession, but information in possession of the state, period. So the prosecutor being like, I didn't know, actually doesn't work. There was a US Supreme Court case on that point, right? So if that were the scenario, we'd still be talking about Brady, although strictly not Brady because there was a subsequent case that held it applicable, but same idea. But because, of course, OnStar GM is not a governmental agency, you don't have the imputation that you would have. So it's not a violation in that sense, but the defense obviously could still say unfair surprise because we didn't have it. But if they don't want to object to it, then I guess everyone's happy. So, fine. I bet OnStar updates their privacy policies. Their privacy policies has zero to do with this. You can't write a privacy policy around this. Right? If you have the data, you have to give the data. That's the nature of a subpoena. Right? You have to comply with you have to comply with orders. So OnStar can revise their privacy policies all they want. I don't know how it could possibly matter one way or another, to be quite honest, in any event. Whatever their privacy policy did say or would say has very little to do with anything in this analysis. So anyways, so that is where we were sitting on that. So the witnesses started with Ryan Kelly from SLED just for the limited purpose of saying how he collected DNA samples. Then we heard from Rachel Wynn, DNA forensic expert, who testified that various shell casings that were found had DNA from various people in the Murdaugh family. Now, I don't know what the significance of this is because at least it doesn't seem that these shell casings have been tied to the murder. There was a lot of firearms discharged on this property, including the firearm that was used in the murder, if it was the firearm used in the murder, because we don't have that either. But this firearm, if it was the firearm used, had been used a lot on the property for hunting. And so the shell casings that are found near the scene of the murder don't necessarily mean they're from the time of the murder, unless there was some sort of information that passed my attention, which is possible because it's been difficult at times to pay attention to this in full because it's really, really dull. In terms of the way the evidence is presented, it's been problematic. So anyways, there was a lot of this DNA evidence. They also talked about this presumptive DNA testing and the blood testing, or not blood, because although it tested presumptively positive for blood, it did not test confirmed positive for blood, although there was DNA. So DNA, but not blood. Or DNA, but we're not sure if it's blood. From the shirt. Now, from my knowledge of the preliminary hearings, it was my understanding that in order to detect whether it's blood or not, you need at least 4 micrograms. But for DNA, you only need 1 nanogram. So presumably, it would be somewhere between 1 nanogram and 4 micrograms. But 1 nanogram and or 4 micrograms is not very much. A microgram is a millionth of a gram. 4 millionths of a gram. A gram is roughly a paperclip is roughly a gram. So take a paperclip and divide it into million segments and get 4 of them. And that's how much we're talking about. So it's not much. So when you say that the wife's DNA was found on the shirt, wow, tell me another tale, right? If the wife was anywhere even remotely close to the shirt at any time, breathing in the same room, there's probably 4 micrograms of her DNA on the shirt. You know, because when you breathe out water that might contain DNA and skin flakes and everything. So it's like when they say there was some DNA from these people, I'm like, wow, tell me another story. The blue raincoat of destiny had no presumptive positive for blood anywhere on the coat. So the coat, which the state's theory is the guns were wrapped into in the immediate aftermath of the very, very bloody murders, there is no blood on the coat. 71 spots they tested for blood and no blood on the coat. When they found cartridge casings to test for DNA, they soaked all 6 of them in the same solution at the same time, which seems like a questionable practice to me, because now you can't determine which of the 6 had the DNA on it. You would be able to conclude it came from one of them, but which, you don't know. And you don't know if it was only on one of them or all of them or some of them. And that might be valuable information, but apparently that's not how we test things. The Ford F-250, Paul's truck, was also tested. No DNA found. So that seemed like a whole lot of stupid. Sarah Zapata, DNA analyst, testified to more DNA stuff and DNA profiles. And this is the one where she had all sorts of weird analogies to explain things, and the seesaw and grandma's cookie recipe somehow entered the mix. Grandma's cookie recipe, which you know has 2 cups of flours and something DNA question mark. The analogy left a little bit to be desired. They talked about the fact that, like, Alex and Murdoch contributed blood to various things that were found, like the shotgun that Murdaugh had with him the night of the murders. Not the murder weapon, but the night of the murder. Of course, Alex Murdaugh's DNA is on it. He was holding it. And again, if you found Maggie's DNA on it, she lived there. So again, I mean, sure. But it's not the murder weapon, right? If it was the murder weapon, this would be a lot more interesting. If you had the murder weapon and you said, all the DNA I could detect from this was some combination of Alex, Paul, and Maggie's, and no one else, that would be pretty informative, right? Because if it were the murder weapon and the only people's DNA you found on it were Alex, Paul, and Maggie's, then the logical conclusion would be only those people touched it. Now, of course, it's possible that someone else touched it with gloves, but now you are, at least you are a lot closer to saying, these, and again, because you're talking about such minute numbers, that this person, the real killer, wouldn't get sweat on it anywhere, whatever, or touch it or whatever, that seems a little bit more improbable. So if you had the murder weapons and you said, I found only some combination of Alex, Paul, and Maggie's DNA, that would be a lot more helpful. I found them on guns unrelated to the murders, not particularly helpful. because you don't know. Well, they weren't used in the murders. He got it from his house for his own protection when the police were taking 20 minutes to show up because he lived in the middle of nowhere and he wanted to protect himself. So he says, and presumption of innocence is his. So, yes, there are DNAs on the gun. Tell me a different story, right? It doesn't really make any sense. Then the one that I thought was interesting was DNA found under Maggie's fingernails. We found unknown person DNA under her fingernails. It seems that she went to have her nails done earlier that day, which, presumably means that the nails were cleaned. And so you would expect them to have DNA from only people that she would have come in contact with during or after the nail salon. They tested the DNA under her fingernails against something like 15 different people. It was a long list. The only one who came close was this guy, Claude Rowe. And then who was the I joined the SEALs team to kill the Black Panthers guy with the sunflower seeds. But even him was a very low match. It was 11-1 probability. Now, at least from my memory, it was unclear which way it was 11-1. Right? It wasn't clear to me which way it was 11-1. And I think that the person testifying might have said both, which confused it. So you have two possible universes, right? Is it Claude's DNA or is it someone else's DNA? So these are the things you're comparing on. The probabilities, Claude's DNA and someone else's DNA. So one of them is 11 times more probable than the other one. But it wasn't 100% sure which one. Because I think that, at least from my way of hearing the testimony, and she might have misspoken, but the way I heard it, I think she said it both ways around. Regardless of which way it is around, though, 11-1 is not considered a high probability match. Not in these kinds of numbers, because in these kinds of numbers, we were dealing with numbers that are so huge. They are numbers that I haven't heard in a while, right? We're talking about quadrillions, quintillions, octillions. And I think we got to sextillion at one point, which is 16 times 3 zeros. I think we got to sextillion at one point. So when you're talking about comparative probabilities of 1 to, a sextillion on the one hand, and 11-1 on the other hand, 11-1 is not very compelling. So it might have been the groundskeeper, maybe, but it was an unknown match, and they weren't able to get to any level of confidence. So this seemed like a pretty interesting thing. Why they say CB Rowe was 11-1 and not quintillion percent? Presumably because they're not making things up. And that was as confident as they were able to be. The reason it seems that was as confident as they're able to be is because they only found 3 unknown alleles. Alleles are like a marker in DNA. And so the more alleles that you are comparing, the more unique you have. So random people share alleles. So if you take any two people, because people share DNA, right? They share segments of DNA, right? You will find commonalities in alleles. It's only when you have so many alleles that you can get to higher and higher levels of confidence. So apparently with 3 alleles, you can get down to 11-1, which, there was more than 11 people in the courtroom at that time by quite a bit. So it could be this guy, or it could be any one of 7 different people in the courtroom as we're talking. You know, that kind of thing. So, not it could be this guy, or it could be, well, there's more than 11 people on the jury. So it could be this guy, or it could be one of the jurors, right? So not a great match. We also learned apparently that when you're doing a presumptive test for blood, other non-blood things can test positive for blood. What are those things? Well, apparently cauliflower. Cauliflower is one of the things. It could be blood, or it could be cauliflower. We're not sure which. Could go either way. Blood, cauliflower. This, of course, assumes it's human blood at all. At this point, we're just trying to determine blood, period. Blood of some variety. Could be in animals, or it could be cauliflower. Or horseradish. Horseradish was also there. Horseradish or cauliflower. So we have learned a new way into a vampire's heart. If you have a vampire, just make them a dish of cauliflower. Really, really works great, apparently. So, okay. Fine. So there were lots of problems with the DNA tests because I don't think they really proved anything, to be honest. They found the family's DNA on the guns that were in the family's home. Wow. We finally concluded with Dr. Ellen Reamer, who has done 5,500 autopsies in her career and also really loves her job. A lot. She has a very jovial, happy, excited style of talking about the murders. She likes talking about the murder. She would really like to talk to you about the dead bodies and the murders. It makes her really, really happy and excited. And it's a little much. Also, somehow simultaneously, she's also very dry to listen to. I'm not sure how both these things are possible at the same time, but she found a way. She found a way to simultaneously come off as really interested, really excited, really happy, kind of inappropriately so, and also be really boring. Also, a little bit patronizing at times, where I felt like I was being talked down to. And she was somewhat vivid in her descriptions, describing how the shotgun blast killed him. Apparently, the first shotgun blast he would have survived, but the second shotgun blast went through his skull and his brains came out and had to be collected separately in a bucket. Apparently, and I did not know this, apparently, being shot in the head by a shotgun to the point the brains come out of the skull would be instantly fatal. Wow. I know. This is a revelation. I know. Apparently this would instantly kill a person. Okay. So, yeah. They said there were no defensive wounds, like their hands weren't up at the time. So, whatever. The toxology report, Paul only had caffeine in his system. And then they went through some detail about the order of the shots. Reamer also said the next to last and final shots came from different directions, which is an interesting thing. And we had no cross-examination yet. Also, the manner of death was homicide. So, glad we cleared that up. So, I find the state's overall evidence continuing to be not very helpful in trying to determine who the murderers are. It just feels like a lot of dots scattered, and to my mind, I don't see a pattern. I just see a lot of dots scattered around and that don't look like anything. They don't seem to be trending towards anything. It looks like random noise to me. It doesn't seem to be driving anywhere. Maggie also had only caffeine in her system, for whatever it's worth. So, all that stuff. So I don't really find this very helpful. Paul's DNA was found on the shed in which he was killed. His DNA was found on the knob of the door that goes into the shed in which he was killed. So Paul was present at the location in which he was killed. That was helpful information. So I don't really understand any of this really from the state's case. And I continue to think the state's case is basically non-existent. That being the case, however, my perception, of course, is not the jury's perception. And the jury is able to see a lot more evidence than I am, and you and I are together. So, what it all means is open to some question. I thought we'd also go again and just look at this chart that I did earlier today at the start of my stream today. So for those of you who saw my stream earlier, this will be familiar. But I thought we could take another look at it because it was kind of helpful and informative. All right, so this is a timeline of the murders that someone on Twitter put together. My belief is that where it says duration, time, seconds, activity per evidence and data collected, my belief is that those fields are factual. The left-handmost column, theory, and the right-handmost column, details on theory and alibi, are this person's opinion. So I think the left-handmost and right-handmost are opinion, but the rest is fact. So here is sort of the facts. The last text message on Maggie's phone is read at 8:49:27, and the phone is locked at 8:49:31. So we'll just call it 8:50. All right. So Alex is at the kennels at 8:44. Paul and Maggie are using their phones up until 8:50. So they're alive at 8:50. If you go down to this Greenfield drive to Mom's, 9:06, car is out of park. So he has so if you believe Alex Murdaugh committed these murders, he has 16 minutes tops to commit these murders. This, of course, assumes that he killed them at 8:50. He has 16 minutes tops. In that 16 minutes, he has to clean the scene. He has to clean himself. He has to get rid of the guns, presumably by putting them in the blue tarp that somehow don't have any blood on them, despite the fact that he would have had to do this in a rush. He has to change clothes because he can't go to his mom's house in the blood-soaked clothes he's certainly wearing. He has to potentially shower inside the house, go inside the house to change clothes, get rid of the clothes, get rid of the guns, and drive to his mom's house, all in the space of 16 minutes. On this guy's timeline, at least, he thinks the phone was thrown away when he came back, which doesn't really make sense, but that's what this person thinks is true in the timeline, which doesn't really make sense. So he drives home at 10 o'clock. He grabs the phone. He drives for 12 seconds, somehow gets like a half mile away in 12 seconds, which is pretty impressive, tosses the phone, drives back to the house, and parks at the house. Or in the alternative, he did it earlier, but this person's timeline has them doing it when they come back. So he has them coming back at 10, and he's making the 911 call at 10:06. So that seems kind of implausible. That seems yeah. And then all while not leaving traces of evidence anywhere. Not leaving traces of evidence in the shower, because Sled was there that night. And again the next day, looking in the house with permission. They had permission to search everything. They had permission to search. The next day, they're in the house looking around with his permission to search. They don't see blood. They don't see bloody towels, bloody clothes, bloody shower, bloody drain, bloody anything. I just don't think he can do it. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. It's a very, very tight time frame. And for it to be possible, it would have had to been meticulously planned out with a goddamn checklist. And everything has to go right. Which, yeah. So it just seems implausible. Thank you. I'm really eager to see the OnStar data. I'm imagining the OnStar data is not going to tell us anything we don't already know. I imagine the OnStar data is not going to tell us anything we don't already know. Like drug addicts are known to be, yeah. This is a very tight time frame to pull this off. And he didn't do this on the fly. He had to have had this plan ready to go. Right? He had to have this plan ready to go. And so basically, you're in this position where you believe he gets the call, he's confronted about this check, which somehow gives him the motivation, even though during that very call, he also gets a call, or during that conversation, he also gets a call that his father's in the hospital on death's door. And everyone forgets about the check because, of course, they do. But you have to believe that Alex Murdaugh had this plan ready to go, Plan Omega, in a file somewhere. And he gets the news about his father's on death's door, and he says to himself, tonight's the night. It's my perfect reason for visiting the house. It's where I can dispose of the stuff. I just have to get my family exactly into the place to execute my plan with 2 different guns, and everything has to go perfectly, and I dispose of everything, and somehow don't get blood anywhere in the car or in the house or anything, and everything goes perfectly, and I go over there and I somehow ditch the guns there for a while and then come back some other time and get them, and blah, 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 blah. This seems implausible. Nicole says, seems just as implausible someone came out to the property without leaving any evidence. Well, not really, because as we've heard at least a little bit, there was a storm coming through that. There's a storm coming through that night. So that helped a little bit. And also, Sled was very sloppy in not preserving the scene. So that helped a little bit. Also, this isn't like a game of which is the most likely. At least it's not supposed to be, right? This isn't a game of which scenario is the most likely, and that's the scenario we vote for. This is a game of beyond a reasonable doubt is the game we're supposed to be playing. So we're not supposed to be playing the game of let's consider all the possibilities and let us figure out which is the most plausible. And that's the one we're going to vote guilt for. So even if you consider all the possibilities, and even if you conclude that Alex Murdaugh killing his family is the most probable of the many possibilities, the question isn't, is it the most probable? The question isn't, is it the most likely? The question isn't, is it the most reasonable? The question is it proven beyond a reasonable doubt? No, I have many reasonable doubts. This seems implausible. There's other scenarios that seem very plausible. Even if I concluded this is the most plausible, that is not the right standard. The right standard is beyond reasonable doubt. See, I'm under no particular burden to give you an alternative explanation. That's the idea, right? We're supposed to presume innocent till proven guilty, right? He is presumed innocent. I don't have to give you an alternative suspect. The state has to prove he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So if I'm like, well, they haven't proven a guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and you ask me who's the real killer, I can be like, I don't know. I can even do you one better. I can even say not guilty, and you ask me who's the real killer, and I say Alex Murdaugh. But you just voted not guilty, right? But you think he's the real killer. Yes. How can you do both those things at the same time? And the answer is because while I might think it's the most plausible, while I might think it's the most likely, while I might think it's the most reasonable, I do not think they've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. So he gets away with murder? Well, that's our system. That's the law. What do you want from me? We're doing this by law, right? So is he a murderer? Will he get away with murder? Maybe. But that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the correct answer. If you don't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, he's supposed to get away with murder. That's the correct answer. Because the state fucked it up. So, that's the right thing. So, I'm not telling you not to think Alex Murdaugh is the murderer. I'm not telling you to think that. I don't think that, but if you want to think he's the murderer, okay. But do you really believe the state has proven it beyond a reasonable doubt with this evidence? What evidence is convincing you? You know, what evidence is convincing you beyond a reasonable doubt? You don't have any reasonable doubts? I have many reasonable doubts. So, you know. If he's found guilty, what are the appellate arguments? Best appellate argument is the financials being brought in. The scope of the financials is too broad under 404B and 403. I think is probably the best appellate issue. You could also, of course, try to appeal on the basis that the photos of the autopsy were too gruesome and too prejudicial. I haven't seen them. They're sealed, but that would be an obvious avenue of attack. If it turns out the OnStar information is really, really damning, then unfair surprise would be a good one. What else could you appeal on? Those are the ones that seems most obvious. I think the financials help the defense. The financials have turned it, the defense have turned it into their advantage, to be sure. But the question wasn't, the question that was asked is, what are the best avenues for appeal? And the best avenues for appeal are what I said. I didn't say that any of those avenues would necessarily win, but those seem like the best ones that seem plausible. So the ability of the defense to capitalize on that and use it to their advantage is a very good thing. But the judge may have made legal error in admitting it anyway, in which case that would be a basis to appeal. Venue, maybe. Not a bad idea. You can't get a reasonable jury from this jurisdiction. The problem with venue, of course, is that they went to such effort to find a reasonable jury in terms of the process. They did what you're kind of supposed to do, which is just expand out the voir dire. And they expanded out the voir dire to pay apparently the entire county, basically. But venue is not a bad idea. Venue could work. Didn't they waive venue? I don't think they've waived venue. I don't think so. I think they asked to move it. I don't know why you think they would waive venue. I don't remember them waiving it. Have they waived OnStar issues? Not yet. If they think it will be helpful, but if they make an objection and be like, we looked at it and we think it's just unduly prejudicial. We think it's just unfair surprise. They can still raise that issue. It isn't admitted yet. I don't think they've waived it. The discarded wedding ring that was found in the car after SLED apparently searched the car. So SLED searched the car and apparently didn't find the wedding ring. And then whoever it was, the housekeeper or the carekeeper or whatever it is, I found the ring under the car. Yeah, I don't know about that one. Yeah, you take your rings off when you go to Stables when you get your nails done. That makes sense. Not discarded but properly placed by SLED. Well, I was thinking it was properly placed by the person who found it rather than SLAD, but is there a definition of reasonable doubt? I can give you sort of the colloquial definition of reasonable doubt. Um, the exact way it's phrased in the relevant jurisdictions will differ slightly, but I'll give you the sort of all-purpose definition of reasonable doubt. The all-purpose definition of reasonable doubt is the level of doubt that would cause a reasonable person to have pause in their most serious personal affairs. A classic example of which is the decision to get married. How sure should a person be before they get married? And that's the sort of thing we're thinking about. Like how sure should you be? Now, one could quibble with that example given the divorce rate, but let's not think about it too hard. So apparently beyond a reasonable doubt means people fuck it up all the time. But let's not worry about that factor too much. But that's the sort of poor man's version of reasonable doubt. The level of doubt that would cause a reasonably prudent, ordinary, common person of ordinary, prudent, common intelligence, the man on the bus, the everyman. What would cause the everyman to have pause to do something in the most important and serious affairs of his life? That's reasonable doubt. In brief. Common people aren't intelligent enough to make these decisions. Well, for better or worse, we have a jury system, and so the everyman is your judge. So these are the realities that we deal with, for better or worse. So you know. Why didn't he police his brass? That's a good question too. We are. Well, I just remember, I just remember I remember the saying. I forget if it was hit from Hitchhikers or something like that. It's just like consider for a moment the intelligence of the average person, and then remind yourself of the reality that half the people are stupider than that. So, yeah, good times. Thank you, Nicole, for becoming a member. I appreciate it. Appreciate everyone who hopes to join a member. Yeah. Wasn't it Churchill who said the best argument against democracy was 5 minutes with the average voter? Yeah. I look so happy, or is it sad? I look sad? Do I look sad? It looks like sad. I don't know. Do I look sad? I was doing pretty good. Maybe because my eyes leak. Who cares what they think? I care about what you guys think. I care about your collective feedback. You're my audience. I care what you think, at least a little bit. Also, I took it as an expression of genuine concern. So if someone really thought that I looked sad to the point that they thought it was important to say so, then I took it as a note of genuine concern. And so I responded to it as though it were a note of genuine concern. That was how I responded to it. Responded to it, assuming it was a note of genuine concern. It's one person. Be that as it may. I want to play the Alex Murdaugh cam video. Give us your thoughts on that. Yeah, I mean, I saw it earlier on, but we could respond to it. Let's see if I can find it real fast. If I can find it. I mean, I don't really know that there's a whole lot of value in it because I don't know what I'm going to be able to say about it, but we can watch it together. I mean, the reasonable doubt mindset, very much so, yes. Yes, very much so. I think we are well into reasonable doubt. I'm a pretty solid not guilty vote right now. Especially because the state's case is coming to a close and it's not going to get any better in the next 2 days. You know, if they haven't made the case at this point, they're not going to come up with a bombshell in the next 2 days. So, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I find it difficult to read people, generally speaking. I'm not a great person when it comes to reading people. I prefer more objective things. And make more objective arguments. Let's see. Like I had trouble reading Amber Heard, quite famously. I have trouble reading many people. And I have very intellectual reasons for that. Like the reasons I have trouble with it are intellectual in their nature. And we've discussed that a little bit before too. All right. So we can watch this thing from Law and Crime for whatever value it has. I'm not sure it has much value, but we'll give it a shot.
Almost on the scene is secure. Got a Whiskey Fox, Whiskey Mike, both gunshot wounds to the head.
Email, what male?
I wanted to let you know because of the scene. I did go get a gun and bring it down here.
It's in your vehicle. Do you have any guns on you at all?
No, sir. It's leaning up against the side of my car.
Okay. You're fine, man. You're fine. Turn around for me.
I don't have any.
Okay. Yes, sir. I see that. Okay. This is your wife and son.
And son.
Okay.
It's bad. It's bad. Check the pulses.
Yes, sir. This is the firearm you brought from inside the house?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I went and got. This is a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. Most of it's been benign stuff we didn't take serious.
Okay.
You know, he's been getting like punched. I know that's somebody. I know that's what it is.
Okay. When did you get home? Right when you called, or did you go to the house first? Where is the house?
I came to the house first. My mom has late stages Alzheimer's, and my dad is in the hospital.
Okay.
I left I don't know what time. I can go back on my phone and tell you the exact times. Did you check?
Okay. Did I check what?
Did you check them?
We got medical guys that are that's what they're gonna do. Okay.
What are they doing? Can they hurry?
They are. Yes, sir. That gentleman that was out here already, he's one of the battalion chiefs. Okay. How did you pull up? You from back there?
I went to the house and they weren't home, which was odd. I tried to call.
Okay.
And then I knew they had been down here before I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
And so that is loaded.
Okay.
You might want to unload it. But I mean.
Is this the only firearm with you? This is the only one, or is there any more in the truck?
I believe that's it.
You think that's the only one? Okay.
I'm 99%.
Do you normally
certain that's
have
right.
any other firearms in your vehicle?
I don't, but
Okay.
occasionally there's a pistol in there.
Okay.
I mean, it just doesn't mean anything to me, guys. It just,
Just wait right here for me for a second, okay?
I am just the wrong person to ask about this. I am the wrong person to ask about this. I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you exactly why I'm the wrong person to ask about this. I pursue these things in a very sort of intellectual way. I look for consistency in rules, right? In case like you need a window into my psychology. Okay, I'm a very sort of process oriented person. I'm a rule kind of based person. I tend to look for things in rule, not result, right? If I come up with a result I don't like, I tend to look for mistakes in process. And if I need to make a correction, I try to universalize the change, right? I don't like to make changes on a one-off, because that's not great. I'm a big fan of the philosopher Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant talks about categoricals, right? Things are true or they're not true, right? Things are always or they're never. Right? It's a categorical. And so he said, among other things, that the only truths that are truths are truths that can be maximized without contradiction. So if it's only true if it can be taken to its extremes and not break. So I give you that background to now tell you this. One of the things that we have, or at least I have heard as a person in society, is that there is no right way to be a victim. You hear this, for example, in the particular context of DV or SA victims, right? How much have we heard about this? About the concept that DV victims shouldn't act a certain way. SA victims shouldn't act a certain way. If they do certain things, it might defy our expectations. And we shouldn't expect them to act a particular way, and they might act in ways that might surprise us. Well, if taking things categorically, I'm like, well, if that's true of SA victims, and it's true of DV victims, for it to be true, it must be true of all victims, because it's either true or it's not, right? That's the whole idea of categorical imperatives. If it's true of an SA victim and it's true of a DV victim, then it must be true of all victims, right? Now, I would just like to kindly remind everyone at this point that the presumption legally is that Alex Murdaugh is a victim because he's innocent until proven guilty. If he's innocent, it must be that he's a victim because he's not a perpetrator, right? If he were a perpetrator, he'd be guilty, but he's not. He's innocent. Therefore, he must be a victim. Our presumption is innocence. Our presumption is victim. Thus, when I watch this tape, I am just applying rules. I'm applying rules. I am looking at him and being like, my presumption is that he's a victim. My presumption is that he's innocent. I've been told that victims can act in all kinds of ways. I've been told that victims don't behave in particular ways. And therefore, when I watch his behavior and you're like, what does it mean to you? I'm like, it means nothing to me. It means nothing to me because you've told me it's supposed to mean nothing to me. Or society has told me it's supposed to mean nothing to me. Right? It either has meaning or it doesn't. Does a way a victim's act have meaning or doesn't it? Right. So so I tend to think very categorically. So I am the wrong guy to ask about this because I watch it and I'm like, well, he's acting in this way. Is that the way a victim would ask? I'm not allowed to ask that question. So I don't ask the question. So that's sort of why in a technical sense, right? That's why in a technical sense, I view things the way I do. So I watch this and I'm like, well, is he acting like a victim would ask? I'm not allowed to answer that question, or I'm not allowed to ask that question. So I'm not sure why people want me to view the video. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So, I mean, it does nothing for me. So I tend to view things that are more objective. I tend to view things that are more objective or things that really stare out. So, you've just been through a traumatic episode. Again, presuming he's innocent, which is our default presumption, right? That's our filter. We're not supposed to start neutral. Right? The rule is we presume innocent. We don't presume neutrality. We presume innocence. Our presumption is victim. Our presumption is innocence. Okay. He is therefore ab initio a victim. He has seen the blown up brains of his son. Would he act sad? Would he act angry? Would he remember everything that happened in his day in crystal detail? Or would he forget things? Would he say things with clarity? Or would he just say all kinds of shit? And would it be possible that those answers might change from moment to moment as the adrenaline and other sort of feelings he's having are creating their cascades through the person's body? Might it be possible that one moment he would be rational and the next moment irrational? One moment cogent, the next moment not cogent. One moment remembering everything, the next moment forgetting everything. Would it be possible for him to say something 1 minute and the next moment say something completely contradictory? And it might be possible for him to say some stuff and him not even realize that he's saying it just because his mind is working at 1,000 miles a minute. So, because I'm supposed to, not judge a victim based on their behavior, I don't. And therefore, I'm the wrong person to ask. Also, if he's acting, he's a better actor than Amber Heard. So, my rules do eventually break. There's a point where I could be like, okay, no, this doesn't work. So, because I am not as although I'm heavily influenced by Kant, and he's by far my favorite philosopher. I don't know if he was right in his most extreme, which Kant is all about most extreme, but still, like, I don't know if I can quite take Kant as far as he wants to go. But, there's a point where it breaks down, and that point we found with Amber Heard, at least. So, yeah. Are you able to take from experience and relate to what he's feeling? Hell no. No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. I don't think any of us can. I'm not sure. I don't know that many of us have been in any experience that's even remotely comparable to this, right? Have I been in any experience from which I could, what was the question you asked me? Am I able to take from experience and relate to what he may be feeling? Not even a little bit, no. No. No, perhaps unsurprisingly, I have not had any experiences in my life that come even close to anything that we're talking about. So, no, I cannot extrapolate from my life experiences and be like, well, I've been through a similar situation and this is comparable. And so I would have reacted dot, 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 dot. And, if you've been through a situation that's comparable to this situation, well, yeah, I don't think many of us have been in Diogenes. Diogenes kicks ass too. He kicks ass. Diogenes is a great one. The original cynic. Yeah. So I doubt there are very many of us that could reasonably relate to what's going on there. And even if you've been in a situation similar, I'm not sure how I'm not sure how much that would be informative. Because unless you've been in a lot of these situations to become numb or used to it, I would imagine that your reaction would be unique. Are the prosecutors going to be able to admit the other 99 indictments? Well, they're going to ask about the financial crimes for sure. Yeah. The rumor mill apparently today, apparently the rumor mill is that Alex Murdaugh is thinking about testifying. I don't know about that. If he testifies, it'll be a very interesting cross. I don't think it's a good idea either. I think it's a problem. Why would he testify? I don't know. Because he's an arrogant egomaniac like most lawyers. Are they capable of a good cross? That's a fair point. Has any lawyer ever testified in their own murder trial? I'm sure it's happened. I wouldn't recommend it. He probably should know better, but people do some dumb things. They're definitely going to ask him about the financial shit. Of course they are. It's all relevant now. And yeah. And that if he testifies, that arguably renders moot some of the issues that are pending. Will that be something the defense would make public? They're floating it as a trial balloon to see how people react to it. That would be why. They're floating it to see what people's reactions are. Possibly induce the state to take some sort of steps that they might be able to learn something from. That would be the reasons why. Can he appeal if he loses? Sure. I think he has some reasonably positive appeal possibilities. Appeals are for losers, but the financial stuff is just so broad that I think that there's reversible error. He'd be crazy to testify. I think so. The state can't appeal if they lose. That's true. Yeah, the state can't appeal. Double jeopardy and all. They can in Canada apparently, because Canada doesn't believe in freedom like we do in America. So in Canada, the state can appeal legal error, but not in the United States. So if the judge makes legal error that prejudices the prosecution in the United States, so sad. So sad. It's a sad, sad situation. But yeah. So if the judge screws up by like not letting in evidence or not letting experts in or whatever, yeah, the judge can basically sabotage the case completely for the prosecution. Judges have insane amounts of power, and a judge can go way off the rails, and it's not known to happen often, but it has happened before, where a judge just goes completely off the rails and just starts disqualifying the state's witnesses and experts and even fact witnesses and basically be like, this person's not going to testify. What do you mean they're not going to testify? They're just not. So yeah, yeah. But we've decided as a society, we don't care. So yeah. Doesn't happen often, but every once in a while. I mean, it has to be really bad for anyone to notice, because judges are going to good judges will make decisions that will be adverse to the state from time to time. It doesn't necessarily even mean they're wrong. And even where they are wrong, it's usually like, well, it's just the way it goes. The defense gets to appeal, you don't. So sad. Yeah, if he takes a stand, those questions will come in. And the appeal would just go to retrial, yes. Is the video footage over? Yes, because I didn't see any further value in covering it. We watched a minute of it, and I didn't see any further value. Would you like to watch more? We can. I'm not sure why, but we could.
Kill your front lights, I can't see. Six, 5, 3 out, so. Enjoy it, sir. Yeah, well, I've already spoken with Captain Deal. He's got crime scene. He's contacted them. He's also going to give us the assistance of a couple of field agents. Roger that.
No. They're dead, aren't they? They are dead, aren't they?
I just turned on those.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
Randy. He's smaller dead. Where are you now?
I mean,
All right.
I don't really know what I'm supposed to be looking for. I find his behavior consistent with a man who just found his blown out brains of his son and shot wife. I think I'd be losing my shit more. But I find his behavior consistent, although I'm not really even sure what I'm supposed to be looking for when I'm asking that question, because consistent in what respect? Because I'm not supposed to ask that question. So the question, I don't, okay. So it doesn't do anything for me. It's totally his voice on the video. The defense basically already conceded that in their opening anyway. All right. He has to explain the lie. No, Luke. He has to explain the inconsistency, not lie. Lie is presuming his intent to deceive. He has to explain the inconsistency. But it's doable. It's doable. You mean lie? I'm not sure on what basis you're drawing that conclusion. All right. Well, that appears to conclude our stream for tonight. Thank you very much for all of you guys who jumped in on the stream. By the way, thank you for all of you guys who've been buying so many memberships lately. I've really been appreciating it. We've really done really well recently on the whole membership things, and we're only 230 subs away from the next 1,000 milestone. And that's pretty cool. Also, 5 days ago, we passed 10 million total views. That's pretty cool. So that's really encouraging, all things considered. Yeah. Memberships are up quite a lot in the last month. So that's really, really nice. That's awesome. I'm really, really happy with all that's doing. In terms of the channel, in terms of what I want to do going forward, I think tomorrow I'm going to take an opportunity to try to experiment with something, just to see what one looks like as a style. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to record a video on something. I'm not sure what, but I have some ideas that I can look through. I'll find something that looks interesting that's legally related, and maybe I'll do something on the Chinese weather balloon or something. I don't know. The law related to that or whatever. So I'll do a video. I'm going to record it, edit it, and I'm going to put in some more B-roll than I normally do with some like stock images and stuff, and see if how that helps, and potentially release it tomorrow in the evening as well, and experiment with trying something a little bit different in terms of the presentation format to make things a little bit more interesting. So that's what I'm planning on doing tomorrow, I think. Double Jeopardy conspiracy issue. I've done a video on that already, but I suppose I could deep dive it more. Really do something more thorough on it. But yeah. But I think I'll do that tomorrow. And then Wednesday and Thursday, Rakita isn't streaming. So I might stream Wednesday or Thursday. Maybe Thursday or late Wednesday with the start of the defense's case would be good. So I might pick it up again with the start of the defense's case if they start on Thursday. So go from that. Time to increase the membership price. Well, one of the things I want to do is make it as accessible. You know, if I have more people at 99, a lot of people at 99 cents makes things accessible. And there are higher membership tiers if you want to pay for a higher membership tier. But very, very few people do. Almost nobody does. There's a few people. There's like 32 people right now at the $5.99 level, $3 at the $9.99 level, and $5 at the $19.99 level. So there are currently 40 people total at the membership tiers beyond 99 cents. So it is not a very popular, thing. So if you want to pay for a higher membership, it is available. But it's just not very, very possible, it's not a very hard thing. And I want to make it really easy for so many people to join. I'm working under the premise that having a higher percentage of people as members is a good signal for the channel. So I think even assuming the same amount of revenue, I think having a higher number of members is good. So I'd rather have, please don't make me do math, but I'd rather have 5,000 members at $1 each than 1,000 members at $5 each. Yeah, that works. So yeah, that works as math. I'd rather have 5,000 members at $1 each than 1,000 members at $5 each. That's the same amount of revenue, but it's 5 times as many members. And I think that's probably a positive signal, I'm guessing, for the channel and stuff like that in terms of helping to promote the channel, things like that. So, plus, I know from my own experience that those memberships can really add up. You know, when you're doing $5 at a time, like I haven't used Patreon in a long time, but I remember when I used Patreon and like I would do all those like $5 memberships. Those add up after a while. And suddenly you're spending a lot of money, you know, like, man, this is a lot. So I wanted to make it really inexpensive so that, you know, everyone would do it because it's $1. And, you know, that's more doable. So I wanted to make it more accessible. So all that good stuff. A weekly member only stream is not the worst idea. Make the member only chat at least. That'd be good. So that's the idea. And we do have the locals page if you want to contribute that way as well. Cost of memberships why I didn't cancel when we're cutting things to buy a house. See, there you go. Right? Just make it really, really inexpensive. And gift memberships are really nice because they wind up as a free advertising tool. They're free from your point of view and also from my point of view. They're just free. So it's better for me. If you bought, like, it is better for me for you to buy 5 gift memberships than the $5 super chat, right? It doesn't cost you anymore. In fact, it's slightly cheaper because it's only $4.95. It doesn't. So it's basically the same cost to you, right? $5 in super chat versus 5 gift memberships is the same cost to you. It's the same in immediate revenue to me. I get the same percentage split, but it serves as a free advertising tool because now I have 5 people that have a free membership. And some of those people may choose to buy their own membership or buy other memberships. So it feeds into itself. Like, I don't know what the conversion rate is. I haven't done the analytics on the back end, but you know, if it's anything, it's more than 0, which is like the super chat, right? Super chats have a 0% conversion rate, right? You buy a super chat and that's it, right? It doesn't do anything. You know, if 100 people, if people buy 100 gift, so if someone bought $100 super chat, right? It has a future rate of 0 because like it's $100 super chat and then it does nothing. If someone buys $100 worth of memberships, you know, if 1% of those people choose to buy their own membership, then it had a 1% growth rate, right? And hey, 1% growth rate feeds into itself, right? Because then 1% of those people will buy and so forth and so on, right? So it will become something that, you know, it's probably more than 1%. It just points out that anything is more than nothing. So that's the idea, at least. These are all behind the scenes, way too much discussing. So there's a potential of some amount, and I'm not sure what it is, but it's a potential some amount that some of those people will choose to buy memberships themselves going forward. And some of those people might choose to buy because they've seen basically the ad, because they get the email, hey, congratulations, you got this membership. Some of them may choose to buy memberships, and so on, around and around we go. So it has some sort of ongoing conversion that's more than nothing. So I figure it's got to be better, right? As long as it's more than zero, it's got to be better. So that's my philosophy, or that's what I'm thinking is true. So that's why things make sense. And you get some cool emojis. By the way, if you ever have an emoji idea for the emojis, if you just want to like tag me on Twitter or something with an emoji that you design that I can just add, I have space for like 30 different emojis more I can add. I just don't know what to do because I'm not creative in that way. I have some emojis now, but if there's like emojis that you guys want and you guys can send to me, I'll add them as long as they're, brand appropriate for the channel and, that seem interesting. So if you design an emoji or you see one that, we can use from somewhere that you like, tag me on Twitter or tag me on Discord with the thing and I'll add it. And that'll be good. So, just remember when you're designing them, they have to look really good, really, really small. So they have to be really simple because they have to look good in really, really small size. So, yeah. But if you ever want to design an emoji for the channel, tag me on Twitter or Discord, and that'd be cool. Yeah, I don't know how to design emojis either. I don't have that particular skill set. I was just saying that if you do, it's just saying if you do and you want to, and it works for the channel, I'll be happy to add it. Just be kind of cool. I'm not expecting you to. I was just saying that if you wanted to. Because it's like, I need them. I'm not particularly good designing. I wouldn't know what to design anyway. I'm not really good at that. So just saying, if you want one, that'd be cool. A gavel would be good. We got some gavel related ones, but we could do more gavel-y things. All right, I'm going to sign off for now. This has been fun. I've enjoyed it. Please remember to give it a thumbs up on your way out. I've been Uncivil Law. Until later, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers, my friends, and goodbye.